Welcome to the DA Gauteng. I'm Chris Evans-Smith, and in studio with me, I have our provincial leader, Solian Simanga. I have our Joburg DA caucus leader, Belinda Keza Echio-Zonjoku, and our shadow MMC, Nicole van Dijk. Welcome. The citizens of Johannesburg are experiencing incredible water issues. And these are the people who are going to come to you with some sort of solution for that. I want to start with you, please, Solly. Can you give us an overview of the problems, both locally and provincially?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. I've said this a number of times before that Gauteng is sitting with a very, very huge backlog in terms of the maintenance of its infrastructure around water, around electricity, its roads. And here in Johannesburg, Johannesburg is the oldest here. And therefore, the infrastructure would actually then deteriorate a whole lot more than what you have in other areas. In fact, I think Johannesburg now should be facing something close to 200 billion in terms of its infrastructure overall that now needs to then be overhauled. You're talking about reservoirs that are leaking. You're talking about pipes that are bursting left, right, and center. You're talking about inadequate maintenance program that is already there. And, it's a recipe for disaster. And the sad part is that when we did say to the governing ANC at a provincial level, let's come up with an infrastructure master plan, invite municipalities and say, how do we, municipalities and the provincial government, work together, to have one plan? Because I can tell you right now is that the network is connected. The water that is in Johannesburg somehow finds its way to Makale, or the water in Tshwane finds its way to Makale from Ekurhuleni, from the Vaal and all of that. So therefore, you cannot plan in silos. You need to then say, how do we plan together? And how do we then ensure that we're able to then raise enough money so that all these municipalities are able to then have the infrastructure upgraded and actually then to a level that we would avoid the amount of losses that we're experiencing, and actually we stop the suffrage that is there. So we have reached out. Unfortunately, our plea has been met, with negativity, and now we're seeing the suffering that is there. I'm not wanting to sound like a doomsday prophet, but the reality is that what we experience with load shedding, electricity load shedding, is actually now building itself with water here in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, is actually now going to be the biggest, casualty, if you were to think about it. Because I think of all the municipalities, the population in Johannesburg is quite the highest. The density in Johannesburg of the people that are living in the CBD, living in the townships, and all of that, it's people that are packed next to each other, on top of each other. That is a big challenge that, if we're not going to be able to then address these issues and address them urgently, this is a very big problem that is going to explode in all our faces.
So, I just want to pick up on something that you said, that we can't deal with this issue in silos. This is something that the provincial government also needs to look at broadly and generally, because unless it's done holistically, we are going to continue to have these issues.
Well, that's exactly it. You're now talking about aged infrastructure. That's the first thing. But you're also talking about renewal of the water supply contracts. Let's talk about the renewal of the license. Let's call it that. Which is also a problem on its own. Because, if you're now saying that you should increase the license of the supply of the water, it's good and well. But where is the water going to go? Through which pipes is it going to travel in? Because now you are saying increase the pressure or increase the amount of water that is traveling, which means that on the other end as well, you are now going to then be damaging the already damaged infrastructure, which is going to be chaotic as things are. And then you're also now saying on the other end, because you're not maintaining that infrastructure, and so you also have issues of illegal connections and all of that. So these are things that are problematic, Chris. The solution here is to then say, for provincial government to then say, how do municipalities and us as a provincial government pool our resources together? Have one infrastructure master plan that talks to what we do with the water network. How old is this infrastructure that we're talking to? What do we still have in terms of the reservoirs that are in good working conditions that can be repaired or that can be maintained and then can keep going? How many reservoirs can we build? How do we finance those reservoirs? How do we then clean or how do we then build new purification plants within the municipalities? How do we fund it? If you're able to do that from a provincial treasury perspective to then say we can plan together, we can actually then go there and say as a collective we are having a plan. B, we can then look at, costing it, but C, we can then go, even if we have to then go outside of South Africa to then say, how do we then go into the market and source for an infrastructure funding a model that, will be able to then do this. I can tell you municipalities are not going to be able to do it on their own.
No.
Johannesburg is needing, 200 billion, as I said. What is the current budget for Johannesburg overall? I don't think that the capital budget is not even a quarter of that. Yeah. It means that even if you stop doing anything and everything and just do that, you're still not going to be able to then deal with the problem. And certain municipalities right now, you go to Mfuleni as an example, cannot even pay rainwater. The accounts are being attached. You go to Mahale, that Tyrone Gray was doing so well. They were not even owing us any single cent. They were not owing rainwater any money. Right now, that municipality is now again owing a whole lot of money. And then these are things that you are saying municipalities, if left on their own, will not be able to then garner enough financial muscle to be able to then deal with a challenge on their own. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Another question to you is, how close do you think we are to declaring this a disaster?
Well, look, I don't think that we need to be alarmist. But the reality is that there are already areas that are sitting without water. And the two ladies will tell you, there's reservoirs that are already dry. And there are people that are only getting water at certain times of the day. If you go to Fortsburg as an example, if you don't get water around 1, 2, 3 o'clock early in the morning, forget about having water for the rest of the day. So it is a problem already. It's already a human rights crisis. I don't want to say it's a catastrophe, but we're heading there. We're heading there because we're seeing more and more people that are now beginning to then struggle. If you go to Heidelberg, as an example, there are people that are beginning to struggle more and more. If you go to places like Ahiso in the Western End, there are more and more communities that are going without water, and it's becoming long and longer period that people are sitting without water. In certain times in Lodium in Pretoria, people will go through that as well, especially in the higher lying areas. And we now need to then say, do we have a water scarcity problem, or do we have a management issue? Because the problem is that you now have our river system, the Vaal River system, and you have a good supply of water. So what is available? It's an issue of how do you then clean water, transport water, store water, distribute water, avoid losses along the way, and be able to then account for the amount of water that you're able to then put out, so that you're able to then generate revenue, so that you can then keep the maintenance of all the system going. And I think that's where we are, Chris. All these things are really not being looked at. People are sort of pointing fingers at each other, but nobody's saying, can we come around the table and come up with one singular plan, and all of us are held to the singular plan, and anybody who deviates actually must face consequences. Because I can tell you right now, it should be that if you're not able to then do the job as a CEO, you should be gone. If you're not able to then bring people around the table and have people sitting around the table and talking to the solutions, then you're not fit to be there. If you are there and you're not managing the teams as you're supposed to be managing them, or in the case of Johannesburg, and I'm sure Belinda and Nicole will talk to that in a moment. If you're having a situation where you cannot even see the need to budget adequately, why should you be there?
Exactly. Nicole, do you want to say anything? Belinda, I think if you can just maybe give us an overview from the city perspective, as DA Joburg caucus leader. And Solly mentioned management and working with people. What are we facing?
I can just concur with what Solly is saying in terms of the maintenance and the lack of maintenance for the past 30 years. We can't say that this problem started yesterday. It hasn't started yesterday. There were multiple administrations that just didn't budget adequately and didn't give this the priority it should get. I just want to pick up on what Solly said about the infrastructure, the water infrastructure from a provincial perspective. And I think it's important what he said, that there is a master plan. And it's simple in layman's terms for people to see. If there's a problem in, for example, the Linksfield Reservoir, for example, you'll hear that Rand Water will tell you about Linksfield Reservoir. There are people on the Ekurhuleni side who might not get water, but at the same time also on the Johannesburg side, that so everything is connected.
Yeah.
So it's important to have a master plan, as Solly would call it, to ensure that all the pipes are maintained. The budget is spread to ensure that all three metros is at least to the least, because those are the more where the density is, are dealt with. And also we are sitting with a bigger problem than just maintenance, and the fact that over the years, with the instability in administrations, everybody comes with their own priorities, and you have officials who are trying to make do with what is there. They propose budgets to the administration, and they're overruled when they get when these come to the administration. And it's a serious concern when you have people who just want to do their work, who are professionals who say to us on the ground that we just want to fix what needs to be fixed and we don't want to get involved in the politics, but we are getting dragged into unnecessary politicization of what is happening. One other thing that I also want to just pick up on is the fact that the intergovernmental relations you are talking about is crucial. We have seen the fact that the city, who's the 100% shareholder in Joburg Water, said nothing when the deputy minister laid the blame of the Deputy Minister of Water laid the blame at the municipality. Now we know there's problems with the municipality, the infrastructure is not done. They have a board that have more cadres that are not technical people that can understand what's supposed to happen with water infrastructure. And there are ANC cadres from branches, not only ANC, but this current administration. And those are some of the challenges. So we have a bigger problem that it's going to be a human rights catastrophe at some point, because if you have people in informal settlements who are sitting for 30, 40 hours without water, no proper toilets, you are going to sit with a cholera outbreak because people cannot even wash their hands when they have gone to the toilet, for example, a simple example. So we are sitting with a huge problem that the current administration and the previous administration, the former mayor, who's now more interested in renaming than actual water crisis, has not taken this seriously. And it's not like the DA caucus have not raised these. We have brought motions to council to assist, for example, with the Headfirst reservoir. We have engaged and given proposals to the administration, and then we get statements that they're coming out in the public to talk about the fact that it's a politicizing. But when you a councillor inside the council chambers raise these on behalf of your residents, and you see all these issues, the intergovernmental relations breakdown, the lack of infrastructure for 30 years, the inadequate budgeting. We have 42 reservoirs, if I'm correct, that have leakages, for example. It's impossible to work in such an environment and for residents to see that the city really cares. So we're sitting with an inept administration who just doesn't care about the residents and are more interested, their priorities is elsewhere, instead of being actually for people to have water. For example, now we have 13 days in South Hills, people are without water. I'm also a ward councillor. in my ward, I literally had to drive around to help people get buckets from one person to the other. For example, we don't, make this public, but a lot of these things are happening. So it's hitting home. It's not a matter of it's out there. And it's so unfortunate that the current administration don't see that this should be a priority, and the mayor is nowhere to be seen. Instead, he was receiving a memorandum about a renaming of Stanton Drive, which we feel is completely uncalled for, in the sense that currently we have a water crisis. That should be his priority. So we're sitting with a very, very big problem.
Well, I mean, the mayor himself, in his sort of opening speeches, said we can't expect anything to change in the next 2 years. I mean, that is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know.
And well, it's not strange, because we can't expect anything different from
Sure.
the ANC, who has run the City of Johannesburg since 1994 until 2016, when a coalition government is there. And it's a travesty that they want to take the blame from 2016 and now put it here. They had the opportunity to maintain the infrastructure they have inherited in 1994. A working infrastructure, and they failed to do that. And the fact that they kept quiet when the Deputy Minister of Water mentioned that, put the blame all at the municipalities, surely they should have said, you talk about this infrastructure grant, how do we access it? It's the first time we heard about the specific water infrastructure grant. If we knew as councillors, we would have held the executive already accountable with regards to that. So those are some of the issues we are dealing with, that people are keeping a close, shall I say, brotherhood in terms of to maintain patronage. Because how come nobody knew about this water infrastructure grant that could assist municipalities, and the deputy minister is putting it in a forum as if it's something new? So those are some of the issues we are dealing with, and it's clearly that they want to retain the status quo and then come in and become the savior and use it for election campaigns.
100%. Nicole, as the shadow MMC dealing with the water crisis, I mean, you are faced constantly on a daily basis with residents complaining, with residents saying, how come we are blamed because the administration blames them for the water? How come we are blamed, but nobody comes to fix the leaks and the gushing water, etc., etc.? What is your experience at the moment? How are you dealing with this?
Well, I mean, we've been dealing with this effectively at this scale since September last year. We had a situation in Joburg South where residents were going without water on 77 days. It was only because councillors actually called for action from national government that we had then Senzo Mchunu, who came out, addressed the residents and said, well, we're going to do a system of water shifting, and we'll make sure that there is money allocated to fix South Hills Tower. We then had the situation in January where we saw the first real impact of Eikenhof power station tripping, and what that does to the entire city's water system. 70% is fed from Eikenhof. We then saw it in March in the Randburg area, and so it's been an ongoing thing. And yes, residents are constantly told by the executive, you need to maintain water. And we are a water scarce city. But when you are losing 46% of the water that you purchase from Rand Water, and it's not making it to the residents' taps, you cannot blame residents. We all have to show an example, and that includes the entities, that includes the mayor, to make sure that we get the budget that we need. And I think that's a very big thing. I mean, we were talking about capital expenditure just now, and the DA ran the City of Joburg for 4 years. We ran it from 2016 to 2019, and then we had a brief period after the 2021 elections. And in that time, we actually did allocate money to big infrastructure. We put forward the Brixton Crosby Reservoir, which is going to help Hurstville immensely when it does go live. You also had the Woodmead Reservoir, the Bryanston Tower. We were doing upwards of 150 kilometers, bare minimum, pipe replacement. So we were doing it. It's not happening now. This last financial year, it's 28 kilometers that we've replaced. 28 kilometers. And I just want to say, just on that, The reservoir that's in Woodmead, it was commissioned in 2018. It's still not built.
What?
It's still not built. So we cannot be putting blame on residents when we are not giving them the opportunity to actually store water, and the infrastructure is just not coping. 42 leaking reservoirs is unacceptable.
And you see, this is what I was talking about earlier on, to say municipalities on their own are not going to be able to cope and deal with this issue, and you need a coordinated plan from the provincial perspective, local, and I know that, you know, Panyas and them are easily to say, oh, well, no, this is not our competency, then, you know, we're not going to be part of it. Problem is that once these things start hitting critical levels, it becomes everybody's problem, right? So Nicole spoke about losing 45% of your water. Remember, this is built water. Once it leaves Rainwater's side, it's on your side, it's already built. Rainwater is expecting its revenue back in terms of the water that they're giving you. If you're not able to then claim, you know, compensation for the water somewhere, it means that you are now running at a loss. If you're running at a loss, it means that you're not going to be able to have money to maintain this infrastructure. It means that you're now going to go into a cycle where this thing continues to deteriorate. Your finances are not able to then cope. You have more and more people that are demanding, more and more people that are collecting illegally, more and more problems that are growing.
Exactly.
And this is why I come back to the point that I made earlier on. Until such time as you have an infrastructure master plan, you're able to know how much it will cost. You're able to then say, how do we then have an integrated plan that we can all say we own, and then go out there and raise the funds that you need and fix the problem once and for all, and have capable people in charge of doing this. No corruption, no mismanagement. Once you're able to then do that, I promise you, not only will you be able to then have better running municipalities, because then municipalities' finances are then getting to be running a whole lot better. You're able to know every cent that I'm spending on getting water from Rainwater, somehow I'm getting to be able to then account for it. Because 46% that you cannot account for, it's half of your revenue gone that you cannot account for. And this is something that is a problem throughout a number of municipalities. You know, in Mfuleni, they're not even able to then account for 50+% of their meters. 50+% of their meters. Then it means that you're having less than half of the residents being carried by you know, the other half, and those other half actually are already being burdened. This is why the municipality is running out of money, not only to fix things like the water infrastructure. They're not even able to collect waste now. What end up happening to that waste? People end up doing illegal you know, dumping. Sewer that is now you know, leaking now into the Vaal River system, among so many problems. I mean, people are now banning you know, their waste because it's now not being treated or not being dealt with accordingly. People are now banning, you know, their waste. I remember I was on site where there's even medical waste that is being banned. You can imagine what happens. You have that situation, all that smoke, all that, you know, the toxicity. Where does it end up? In the water system. It creates bigger problems for all of us going forward. This is why it is important, Chris, for this government to really, I nearly said something I shouldn't say, you know, in public, but to really get it right, to really say that we cannot continue in this line that we on. This is going to lead to a bigger problem that possibly we might not even be able to then reverse. And I said to you, I don't want to be an alarmist, but this is a serious problem that we are facing here as a province. And if we're not going to then pull as a province and get it together, what the Johannesburg is experiencing is going to look like child's play in a couple of months and in years to come.
100%. I mean, just what you've said ties into what Belinda said around the cholera outbreak. I worked for the Gauteng Department of Health in a previous incarnation, and we've been waiting for years for that cholera, but it's going to happen, and it's going to happen now. And coming into the hot season now, it is incredibly dangerous.
One of the things that you're talking about, the cholera outbreak, there are hospitals, there are clinics in wards that are without water. And when councillors are asking the Joburg Water, for example, for if you can possibly treat this as an emergency. Trucks, let trucks be there. And I'll get to the trucks, it's another issue. You wait forever for them to tell you exactly when the truck will be there. How do people plan the hospitals, the clinics, to treat people if they don't have water? The schools have to close. There's a number of schools, over the data we collected over the past 48 hours, that schools that have been closed as a result of having no water. So it's a knock-on effect. There are businesses that are closing as a result of no water because they can't, some of them, you need water to do what they need to do.
To manufacture, sure.
To manufacture. Some also they need to, people, it's life for people to be able to do what needs to get done to get to work. So it's a knock-on effect. The leaks that are currently taking forever to be fixed affect the roads. You get potholes. So everything has a knock-on effect. If with a water issue, no water, but there's leaks that are not getting fixed. There are water bursts from meters. People are getting billed more excessive, and they query the bill, and money is not being collected, like you said, but already it's left to Rand Water is now yours. It's a loss for everybody. And this administration in the City of Johannesburg is just not taking it seriously. And we are going to sit with a bigger problem than we actually even thought we had.
I agree. So, I mean, we're not the doomsday cult. What are we going to be doing about it? I know that we have got plans. Sally, do you want to outline where we're going to with this?
So there's quite a number of things that we have to do here. One is that we are pushing very, very hard for this infrastructure master plan. And sorry, I keep hammering on this, but if you have this in place, forget about everything else. So the issue here is to make sure that you have the infrastructure master plan in place, that you're able to then cost it. You're able to then have all mayors, all city managers coming in and signing a memorandum of agreement and holding people responsible. We will raise money, but you cannot use this money to pay salaries. You cannot use this money to do this or that. This money is only going to this infrastructure plan.
Ring-fence it.
Ring-fence it. You can only claim as a grant, and it should only go in terms of what needs to happen. And also, you're not going to be able to then release all the money all at once. Money should be released only on project reporting. So you are given first tranche, go and fix this. You come back, this is fixed. Here's the engineer's reports. Here is the project management reports. Everything is working 100%. Everything is done. You get the second tranche. That is what is going to need to happen now. That's the first thing. The second thing is you need to then say to municipalities, once we begin to do this thing, you must also show financial prudency, first of all. And second of all, you must start to then show how you in municipalities are beginning to then put money aside for maintenance. Because it's not going to help for us to then start replacing these pipes. And then you don't have a plan, or you don't have the reserves that you're building in to start, putting towards that. And I'm saying you will be able to do that because the moment you start having less losses, it means that you're able to then account for every single liter. You're able to then generate, or you're able to then get the income for it, and you're able to then put money aside, for future maintenance or for preventative maintenance of your infrastructure. And not only that, you should then be striving to ensure, like places in like Hyacinth, where I've been through, I think with yourselves, where we've had millions of liters that are just gushing, on an annual basis. I mean, literally, you have almost a stream of fresh water that is just flowing down. And you then say, these are people that should be getting water, but if we were to do it properly, meter it properly, regulate it properly, you should then be able to then avoid losses, but you should be able to then account for each and every liter that you put out there. So that will generate more income for you. That will make sure that you have, the plan in place to then, roll this out. But here's another thing. Until and unless we get rid of as Belinda was saying. You get rid of all these cadres who are not in any way understanding or having an appreciation or comprehension of what needs to be done. I promise you, Chris, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. Belinda, we've got a Joburg Water board that is completely incompetent.
Yeah.
What are we going to push for as the city and as the DA in Johannesburg? What are we going to push for that?
Well, as a DA caucus in Joburg, we are going to call for a petition that is starting today, and we're going to ask for that board to be dissolved.
Perfect.
Because what we've seen the latest expose from the Daily Maverick. There are ANC branch members on that board. There are accountants on that board. There are people who have very little to do with engineering or water, who has no idea on how to do oversight over an entity as important as Joburg Water. So we are running a petition from today, and we are calling on all residents to sign that petition to have the board of Joburg Water dissolved.
100%. And I mean, that's key. I know I'm going to be signing it because I'm tired of having a trickle or no water. Nicole, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really, starts and ends with this board as well, because the boards are the ones that motivate for the funding, and the boards are political appointees from what we can evidently see. Joburg Water made a request for this last budget cycle where they said they needed a bare minimum of 3 billion rand for their capex. Now they've got a 33 billion rand infrastructure backlog. That's where they are currently, and all they got was 1 billion. Now, I've mentioned, the Woodmead Reservoir. That's 18 months behind its cycle. That's new. That is new contractors that we now have to go and appoint. It's more money. And this comes because people didn't have the technical expertise to understand what was required to get the job done, or be able to look at our supply chain management, our bidding, and our bidding for these contracts. It's just a sham. And that comes because we've got, for the most part, boards and leaders and CEOs who aren't aware what they're doing. And I want to make it very clear that Belinda highlighted there are teams that really want to do their work.
Yes.
For the most part, if you are a ward councillor, you spend a lot of time on the ground with these teams because you want to get updates for your residents. And they're saying, but we don't have this part, we don't have this budget, we don't have these vehicles. I mean, right now, Joburg Water, according to their last quarterly report, only has 1/3 of the vehicles that they need. 1/3. And that's why we've got leaks going on for weeks on end. And we cannot be sitting like that. So that comes down to those boards. We've got to look at a situation, and the DA has proposed this both times we've been in government, in an institutional review, to do away with the boards, bring the entities back under the city umbrella, and have control over what's going on, so that we don't have to sit in these council meetings when we deal with these HR reports, and you've got one side of the house saying, let's keep the corrupt member, and the other smaller part of the house saying, well, we can't. Look what residents are going through. So yeah, I'm very excited about this petition, and I hope all 8 million residents across Johannesburg sign it.
Absolutely.
Well, the thing is, you might feel as a resident that this is not affecting you at this point in time, but believe you me, you might be having running water today. Tomorrow you might need a bucket.
Yeah.
Because we might be running out of water.
Yeah.
We might not be able to get water to you.
Yeah.
And it is important that we hold hands, that you come in your numbers, help us to raise awareness and to actually then, really put the blame where it should be. Come and join us so that we are able to then say, it cannot be that the taps in Johannesburg, the taps in Gauteng will run dry. It cannot be. As much as we are a very water scarce country and province, but there is enough water if the management can be done in a proper manner, that we can get people who know what needs to be done in place. And we can have an infrastructure master plan, as I said earlier on. So come up and sign our petition. Let's get all of you residents of Gauteng, residents of Johannesburg, behind the petition. This is not politicking.
Yeah.
It's a matter of life and dare I say, possible death,
Yeah.
of the prosperity of the people of Gauteng if we're not going to get it right. Thanks, Chris.
100%.
Thank you very much, Solly, Belinda, and Nicole. You know, they say the fish rots from the head, right? We need from provincial government to take responsibility. We need from local government to take responsibility for this water issue. Thank you very much for joining us today. Have a good one. Sign the petition.
Sign the petition.